He is one of the most infamous serial killers in modern history. Jeffrey Dahmer, necrophiliac and cannibal, murdered 17 men and boys over the course of 13 years. But what was going on in the mind of this monster? Are killers born evil, or do they become evil over time? First, I'll look at the early life and family of Jeffrey Dahmer, then his crimes, and finally his personality and psychopathy. Jeffrey Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His father was a biochemistry professor at Marquette University, and his mother worked as a telephone solicitor for the American Red Cross. When he was small, his parents would call him Little Monster because he had an evil expression on his face. As a child, he showed disturbing behaviors such as animal cruelty, torturing animals, and killing them. He also engaged in fire setting and was very interested in death. According to his mother, he once said to her, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut off your head, and I'm going to put your body parts into the toilet, and I'm going to flush them down the drain." His parents divorced when he was 18 years old. Then he joined the U.S. Army, but was soon discharged after he tested positive for HIV. He then worked in a chocolate factory where his job was to wrap boxes. It seems that he liked this job more than other jobs and took pride in it. However, he was fired because of his lack of punctuality. During his adult life, he lived with his grandmother. He asked her to move into a retirement home so he could use her house to lure victims. His first victim was a hitchhiker. He invited the young man back to his apartment, drugged him, and killed him. Now moving to his second victim, he placed an advertisement in a gay newspaper and invited someone over for a date. After they met, he invited him back to his apartment, where he killed him by hitting him over the head with a heavy object. And afterward, he dismembered his body and disposed of it. Later, he would use the same MO, or modus operandi, for his next several murders, which means he attracted his victims using personals ads in gay newspapers. He used different variations of the ad. Sometimes he said he was looking for someone for a serious relationship, and sometimes he indicated he was looking for casual companionship. In any case, he always screened his potential partners. He told one suitor that he had herpes and wanted to be sure that the man still wanted to go out with him. With another potential partner, he discussed his desire for sex, and if the individual seemed hesitant, he ended the date. In some cases, he met his dates at gay bars. After selecting his victim, he would invite them back to his apartment. There, he would offer them alcohol laced with drugs. If the victim became unconscious, he would strangle them to death. If the victim was not intoxicated enough, he would hit them over the head with a blunt object until they were dead. Once his victim was dead, he would engage in sexual acts with the corpse and then dismember it. He often boiled the body parts in large stainless steel pots, kept the bones in a bucket filled with acid, and then he ground them into a powder and disposed of them down the drain. Some of the skulls and other body parts were found in his apartment. He saved the rest of the body parts and engaged in cannibalism, eating the heart and liver. After finishing with the remains, he dressed and posed the bodies before storing them in his refrigerator. After committing his murders, he went to work at the chocolate factory and acted like nothing had happened. In many cases, it was his co-workers who smelled something burning and alerted the police, who then found the bodies in his apartment. He was charged with 15 murders, but investigators believe that he actually killed 17 men. The charges included first-degree intentional homicide, second-degree intentional homicide, and abuse or desecration of a corpse. He was found guilty of all counts and sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences without parole. He was also given 5 consecutive 10-year sentences for the corpse abuse counts. While in prison, he suffered from SIDS, which stands for Sudden and Unexpected Death Syndrome, where an individual dies suddenly from no known cause. He died at the age of 34. Now moving to his personality, Jeffrey Dahmer scored high on several psychopathic traits. Here are some of the traits that stood out. He was antisocial, manipulative, deceptive, irresponsible, shallow, impulsive, self-centered, sadistic, violent, lacking empathy and remorse, highly sexual, and he had a need for stimulation. Moving on, we have psychopathy. Psychopathy is a combination of both nature and nurture. Let me explain. There's a genetic component to psychopathy. Researchers found several genetic markers associated with psychopathy. One of these genes is called the monoamine oxidase, a gene, or MAOA. This gene is involved in regulating levels of serotonin and other neurotransmitters related to aggression and impulse control. Another gene is called the catechol-omphiltransferase gene, or COMT. This gene affects how the brain processes dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. Both genes have been linked to aggression and impulsivity. So individuals who inherit certain versions of these genes may be more susceptible to becoming psychopathic. Moving on to the environmental factors. Early childhood experiences play a significant role in the development of psychopathy. For example, exposure to high levels of stress during childhood has been shown to increase the risk of psychopathic tendencies. Childhood abuse and neglect are also associated with the development of psychopathy. There are two forms of abuse: physical and psychological. Physical abuse can include hitting, kicking, burning, etc. Psychological abuse can involve verbal assaults, humiliation, isolation, etc. All forms of abuse are detrimental to a child's development and can lead to the formation of psychopathic traits. Also, if the parent is a psychopath, the child will learn maladaptive behaviors and attitudes toward others. In the case of Jeffrey Dahmer, we know that his parents were emotionally detached. They didn't show much love or affection toward him, which led to a lack of empathy in Jeffrey. Also, his father exhibited narcissistic and sadistic traits. For example, Lionel Dahmer called his wife and son monsters. He also isolated his wife and son, prevented them from having friends. He was even spying on his wife and son, who was also overly critical. Criticized his wife for not keeping the house clean enough. Criticized his son for failing to win a science fair project. In addition, Lionel was having an affair with one of his co-workers, which created a lot of tension in the home. All of these events led to emotional neglect and the creation of a hostile environment for Jeffrey. Another factor that contributed to Jeffrey's psychopathy was the divorce of his parents. Research shows that parental divorce or separation can lead to various negative outcomes for children, such as emotional and behavioral problems, difficulties in interpersonal relationships, and increased risk of mental health issues. In the case of Jeffrey, the divorce made him feel abandoned and created feelings of rejection, which are precursors for psychopathy. He was also a victim of bullying at school. He was bullied for being overweight and for being effeminate. He was also teased about his speech impediment. He was also teased for having acne. He was also physically abused by his stepfather and other male authority figures. All these events led to him developing self-esteem issues and a deep-seated hatred toward authority figures. Another contributor to his psychopathy was substance abuse. Jeffrey started drinking at a very young age. At age 14, he began drinking heavily. At age 16, he began abusing other drugs such as LSD. Substance abuse affects brain development. Heavy drinking during adolescence can lead to decreased levels of cortical thickness and gray matter volume in several brain regions, including the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is important for decision-making, impulse control, social behavior, and risk assessment. In addition, substance abuse activates delta FOSB, a molecule associated with addiction and habit formation. When activated, it makes it difficult to stop using substances because the individual becomes dependent on them. The last contributor to his psychopathy was his fascination with death. From a very young age, he had an obsession with death and dismemberment. He collected pictures of corpses and autopsies, even kept a diary of serial killers. This morbid fascination with death is consistent with what is observed in psychopaths. Jeffrey Dahmer was a remorseless psychopath who couldn't empathize with anyone. He was also extremely impulsive. He often did things without thinking about the consequences. For example, when he was in the army, he pulled a fire alarm in his barracks. When he was confronted by military police, he denied pulling the alarm. When they asked him why he would falsely accuse someone else, he replied, "I don't know," he also said. "People always get mad at me." He was also excessively demanding. He expected his victims to comply with his wishes without question. He demanded oral sex, anal sex, and other degrading acts. He was also very possessive and jealous. He would become enraged if his partner looked at another man. Overall, Jeffrey Dahmer was a disturbed individual who displayed several psychopathic characteristics. Those are my thoughts on the profiling of Jeffrey Dahmer. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, thanks for watching.